Hello everyone, my name is Debashis Pratim Sarma. I am presenting my paper on webinar Classroom at Home, Engagement of Academic Community during COVID-19 pandemic. Before I start, I'd like to thank Women's Librarians Association of Assam for giving me this opportunity. Uh, we all know what webinar is. It is a web-based presentation, lecture, workshop conducted over internet using video conferencing software. During the time of COVID-19, we have witnessed the sudden rise of webinars, and obviously the age of digital world has an impact over teaching and learning process significantly. So this study concentrates on understanding the engagement of the academic community in webinars during COVID-19. For this study, a random sampling method was adopted. An online questionnaire was distributed among PG students, research scholars, and faculty members of different central universities around across India. And these respondents uh, were asked within the time frame of March to June 2020. Uh, so all these responses were downloaded in Excel format and data were analyzed and presented with some informative tables and figures. A COVID-19 pandemic has produced a unique challenge to the world, and academic is no exception. Due to the pandemic, the academic world saw the transformation from traditional mode to technology-based platforms. The webinar is also such technology-based methods most of the academic organizations are using to perform different teaching learning programs. Uh, for this study, three objectives were set. First one, to understand the requirements of participants. Second one is to observe the engagement of participants with webinars. And third one is to find out the issues and challenges faced by the participants. So after the study, I have found that 90% of the participants reported that they were able to provide attention in between medium to high range. Secondly, 83% of the participants, they noted their satisfaction between medium to high. Thirdly, regarding platform, most of the participants, they used Zoom or Google Meet to connect to webinars, and it shows that these two platforms are highly uh, popular among the webinar hosts. Fourthly, the study also shows that people got to know about webinar mostly from social media, followed by institutional website, and lastly, by personal references. So when it comes to the requirements of participants, it was seen that 35% of the participants, they joined webinars based on their own subject area, seconded by hobbies and interests, and 23% of the people, they joined webinars which are awareness related, and 17% of the participants, they joined webinars which are skill related. Secondly, a maximum number of individuals, 47% of the participants said that they joined webinars intending to learn and also to get a certificate, followed by participants who joined to learn. And lastly, some respondents reported they joined webinars to just to get a certificate. Thirdly, among the participants, 44% of the people, they said even though a webinar attracts them but does not provide any certificate for it, they would search for a similar webinar which would provide a certificate. 47% of the responses, they noted that they would still join the webinar, whereas 9% surveyed individuals, they reported that they would just simply ignore it. It actually shows how certificates attracts the participants in joining webinars. So the next point, that 56% of the participants, they suggested that a webinar should be in between of 1 to 2 hours in length, followed by 29% who think that a webinar should be in between 2 to 3 hours, and lastly 15% of the respondents, they think the ideal times of webinars should be in between of 2 and 3 hours. Among the participants, 45% think that ideally webinars should be conducted in the weekend, whether 44% respondents vote for an early week webinar. 11% only said that the ideal days were between midweek. This points out that participants prefer those webinars which are conducted either in early weekdays or weekend days and in between 1 to 3 hours in length. 81% of people informs that they prefer to have live question answer session in a webinar, whether 12% of the participants they vote against it. 7% of the participants they remain undecided whether to have a live question and answer discussion in a webinar. So to understand issues and challenges that have been put out by the participants, firstly, most of the participants, that is 46%, says that they tackle network issues when they join a webinar, whether 25% finds that the audio visual issue in webinars. 18% of the individuals points out that monologue as an issue from the host in webinars, whether 11% respondents accounts complex contents in webinars. Thirdly, one individual said that many of the webinars just covers basic understanding than going into the deeper level, which ultimately reduce interest from the guests. Fourthly, one of the participants says that the host should be attentive towards the network connectivity of the participants. Fifthly, one respondent reported that many of the participants are unaware of the software and there is a need for capacity building for that as well. Another commented that due to the frequent webinars, this may actually reduce interest from the participants' side. Thank you for listening to my study. I again thank the host and especially Women's Librarians Association of Assam for giving me this opportunity. Stay safe. Thank you.